you know about the USA? Do you know about the government? Can you tell me about the Constitution? Hey, learn about the USA.
Hey, welcome to the Thursday evening extravaganza. This is the quickest 20 minutes on the interwebs. 30 minutes if you have ADHD. Last week I had some technical sound issues. I see I have a couple of viewers online now, so please send me a text via the comments if you're having trouble hearing or we have any bleed back in this, and I'll try to fix it during the show. I had a virtual mixer that I've removed, and we're going naked today, no mixer, and we'll see how this works. So before we start our broadcast, we're going to bring on Christine Peters shortly, but I have a few quick news items for this week, just are worth discussing. The first one I'd like to talk about is the term limits referendum was submitted and it was rejected. The clerk's office found some flaws within the term limits referendum and therefore was rejected. I believe personally that this was a political decision and not a, if you will, a bipartisan decision. We have Carzone Pineda Isaacs had a car accident yesterday. I'm told it was not her fault. Somebody was making an illegal left-hand turn on Yonkers Avenue and hit her car. So I hope the councilwoman is okay, and there are no other injuries. The Democratic caucus toured East Yonkers to discuss flooding. Carl Hasty, the speaker, was toured by our Democratic representatives at the state, and hopefully this will lead to some funds where we can mitigate some of our flooding in our hundreds of year-old infrastructure. And finally, I'm told that Chuck Lesnick is seeking County Legislator District 16 appointment. Chuck has lived in the neighborhood for, I believe, over 40 years. Unfortunately, there is no public picture available of Chuck, and therefore, regrettably, I cannot display his image. Chuck, you got to get in front of a camera one of these days. So, tonight I'm being joined by Christine Peters. Let's bring her into the studio. Hi, Christine.
Hi.
Christine, would you like to introduce yourself to our folks out here?
Sure. I'm Christine Peters. I'm somebody who grew up in Yonkers. I'm a mom. I'm raising my family here. I was a district leader. I volunteer all the time. I put together various events. I'm pretty involved in Yonkers, I would say. And I'm just a very concerned citizen who likes to sort of inform other citizens of, anything that I can inform them and support them with.
So Christine, tonight's topic is civic engagement, and what can you tell us? What is civic engagement?
So civic engagement's really anything you can do to support the community. It's volunteering or running for office or donating, your time, your funds. And it's just really working towards making, I guess, the world a better place, starting maybe locally or on the county level, and sort of helping to support each other.
And I think you were also a political candidate?
Yes. So I ran for county legislator in the 14th district twice. The first time I ran against Bernice Spreckman. The second time I ran, it was when Bernice Spreckman stepped down, and I ran against David Tubiolo. And so it was a special. It was called a special election in the summer in August, and I ran to hopefully win that seat, but I did not win that seat.
And what was the most challenging aspect of running for office?
For me personally, I think the most challenging aspect was calling up all of my friends and asking them to please donate money to me, because it sort of felt like this uncomfortable ask. Usually most people are not comfortable with asking other people for money, especially for something that wouldn't necessarily benefit them, right? Some of my friends were in Queens, other friends of mine were maybe upstate or across the country, and I had to ask them for very large amounts. And so that part was a little bit uncomfortable for me, and then I had to go and I had to interview with a bunch of different organizations to see if they would give me money, and really being put under these various sort of constraints were a little bit challenging as well.
So you had mentioned you were a district leader. Exactly what is a district leader?
So a district leader is sort of like the if you think about Lego blocks, it's sort of the building blocks of a political party, and it's the foundation, right? So it's the smallest person within the political party. You're the first elected official there, and your community really elects you, and it's somebody who represents the neighborhood. So it's usually like a few blocks, and you represent your political party in that neighborhood, and you get elected into office. In Yonkers, oftentimes there isn't a primary, but sometimes there is. And so that's what a district leader is. It's also called a county committee person.
Okay, and are there any other blocks that go on top of the district leader blocks?
Right. So in Yonkers, there's a ward leader. So in larger cities, there's a ward leader. So it's basically the person who's on top of the district leaders, who basically like organizes everybody, gets information to them, and helps them to um, sort of have their voices be heard. In smaller cities, they may not always have wards, but different districts are grouped together to form larger wards.
So as a district leader, you're integral in choosing the political candidates that will run for our local offices. Can you explain how that's done?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways that it's done. One of the ways is, you meet these different candidates through different events. They can be community events, they can be through a convention, they can be through like meet and greets, they can be through candidate nights. You meet them, you ask about you ask them different questions that are important for your neighborhood. You can ask them, where do you stand on, infrastructure? Where do you stand on the trees, like, are you for having more tree lined streets, or do you think that they really get in the way because their roots come into some of the homes and they uproot some of the sidewalks? Like, you can ask questions like that, and you can really ask them more personalized questions, and then when you have a convention, you vote for them. And you can also sort of tell your ward leader if there isn't a convention, and your ward leader can hopefully put forward your opinion.
So in retrospect, so you were a district leader. How many? So you represented folks in your district. Like I was a district leader in uh, Ward 5, District 1, and I represented a number of voters. So your vote for that candidate, that represents all of the voters that you represent. Is that correct?
Right. So what happens is, there's a weighted vote, right? So the weighted vote really has to do with how many people within that political party went and voted in the last gubernatorial election. So your vote and the weight of your vote is based upon how many, in my case, Democrats went and voted in that district in the last like governor's election. And so my specific vote was cast for all of them, and the weighted vote of their voice. I was also a ward leader at a time, and we had a meeting called a convention, and we had an executive committee meeting at the time. So I actually voted, and I carried the full weight of my ward, which means I voted not only for all of the constituents that were registered voters, but I voted for the district leaders as well and represented their voice.
That's quite a responsibility because you're actually an elected official at that point for the party. So
Yes.
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's
Um,
kind of a fun role, because you actually have to go and you have to get signatures for yourself to get on the ballot. And what happens is most people don't see your name on the ballot because it's an uncontested race. But if it's a contested race, people have to vote for you as well. So it's actually an elected position.
Yeah, I remember you guys on the Democratic side had to. I think it was last year. Did you reorganize, or was it the year before?
So we
Was
reorganized last year, and we will again next year.
so I think there were a few contested district leader positions uh, last year, which also led to some ward changes last year.
I
So
mean, so there's a lot of different things that happen, right? So one of the great things about sort of reorganizing every 2 years, it gives multiple people the opportunity to become civically engaged. So young people who just are passionate about having their voices heard and feel like the young voice isn't heard and their needs aren't being met, on the local level or on the state level, can really go and run for office in this smaller way, right? Because all you're doing is knocking on your neighbors' doors. They might have seen you grow up. They might have, they might know your parents. And so it gives people an opportunity to get involved. And so we did have contested races. We've had contested races for the past,
yeah,
like decade or so. And actually, one of the things that can happen is during redistricting, you can redistrict these various districts, right? So, but ours
we
didn't get redistricted at
yeah.
all, I think.
Yeah, we just went through the wards. I don't think the wards and EDs changed this year, but the council districts changed, and
Yes.
that's why it's important to have that feedback with your council, with your ward leaders, if you're in the particular party. Remember, you cannot be a district leader unless you're a member of the party. So if you're not affiliated with the party, you lose some voice in your community. Um,
Can I just add, Ron? The
sure,
other thing that's important is that you have to be a member of the assembly district. So you have to be registered within anywhere within the assembly district in order to run for, one of the EDs. EDs are election districts.
right.
So you can be a district leader anywhere within the assembly district that you live in and that you're registered in.
Correct. So that is important because we did disqualify some of our when I was in the Republican leadership, we did disqualify some folks for being in the 89th when they should have been in the 90th.
Right.
So that is an important fact. Uh, is there a way that you can contact somebody to be a district leader?
Well, there's a couple of different things that you can do. You can contact your party leadership, and depending on what your party is, there's there's the Democratic Party, there's the Republican Party, there's Working Families, there's Conservative, and you can contact any of their leaders. You could probably Google it and get their information and see, hey, can you help me if you have any openings or if my specific district is open, can I please run? You can also just go get a petition, go knock on some doors, and you ask the registered, voter for their permission to basically have your name appear on the ballot, and you can run that way as well.
So I'm. Are you able to see the comments from on your end
Um,
as they come up?
oh, yeah, I see it now. I wasn't seeing it before. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I'm going to take some of the questions from the comments. Is there anything you want to add before we do that? Anything you want to add about political campaigns or volunteering for a political campaign? I mean, the topic is civic engagement, so we're not limited to politics. There are many other ways to be civically engaged. But while we're on this thread, is there anything you want to add on district leaders, ward leaders, or campaigns?
So I do actually. So even if you don't want to be a district leader, right? Getting to know who your local candidates are and going and asking them, hey, can I please be a part of your campaign and find out what campaigns are all about, what you're all about, volunteering for them, making phone calls for them, knocking on doors for them can just help this underdog candidate to win, right? Because in a local election, every single vote matters. And so if you volunteer, even if it's just a couple of hours, just one time or a couple of hours a week, you can help somebody who you think is extremely qualified, who may not have the resources financially or otherwise to win this very important office because they're making decisions that affect your everyday life.
And folks, I want to underscore something Christine said about volunteering for candidates that you feel are important. Um, in Yonkers, to run for a council district, people are spending $60,000 to $100,000 to run for mayor. Millions of dollars to spend. It's obscene to spend $60,000 to $100,000 for a $50,000 a year part-time job. So think of the economics in there. That takes a lot of people out of the mix. The other thing that takes people out of the mix is I have a full-time job. Christine has a full-time job, and so if you're taking on these positions as council people, you're in essence taking another full-time job, because it's pretty hard to raise a family on $50,000 when you've got other expenses. So the folks who we have serving us, they're able to do it because they've got their own businesses, or they're tied to a county position or another city position. So I urge you to really find that candidate you want to help, that you think is meets your needs, because they can't win on spending $15,000 to $20,000, not when people are spending $100,000 against them. So I think what Christine expresses is very important. You can't reproduce that human labor to help knocking on doors and passing out palm cards. So I'm going to put up some of these questions. If you can answer some, I can answer some. I think some may more be in my ballpark than yours. Don't want to put you on the spot for anything. So we'll go back here. So we've got a question from Basement Politics with Freddie Vasquez, and he wants to know, how many ward leaders does Zay Jarris control? I don't know that exactly. I know 9 of the 12 wards have some sort of affiliation between the Spanos or the Jarrises. That's on the Democratic side. The Republican side is a little more nebulous. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Christine?
Oh, I honestly have no idea what that question means, what the answer would be. I think you'd have to ask the ward leaders, who their loyalty sort of stands to. I think most times, though, the loyalty sort of stands with what would be best for Yonkers, I would hope, right?
Yeah, and look, I know some ward leaders who are very independent, but at the end of the day, some bargains have to be made. It is politics. So they're going to support somebody. Generally, within the Republican Party, it's the wards. Let's say for the council, if you're choosing the 6th council, or I know the 5th a little better, if you're choosing the 5th council district member, you would have the 9th ward, the 5th ward, the 10th ward, a 12th ward, I think, a little bit. But it's those ward leaders who would weigh on that candidate. I don't know if it works the same in the Democratic Party.
In my time in the Democratic Party, even whether we agreed or if we didn't agree, what I can say is most people voted based upon what they thought was best for Yonkers, right? Regardless of who they were affiliated with or people's decisions can be influenced by people, right? But most of the time, most people vote based upon what they think is best for the city of Yonkers. And whoever that candidate is, just happens to be who that candidate is.
Yeah, right? I mean, that kind of goes into our next question, and I think I kind of agree with you. It's, are you influenced on who to vote on? I think you're usually, so the Republican Party charter is a little different than the Democratic Party charter. We are allowed to hold multiple proxies. I believe in the Democratic Party rules, you can only hold 3 proxies. So in the Republican Party, it's a lot easier because generally to make things candidates are selected at a nominating convention. And to make things easier at the nominating convention, your ward leaders usually ask you to sign the proxy over to them. If you show up at the meeting, your vote supersedes that proxy. And you can vote for whomever you want. And I've never been felt I've been pressured to vote on anybody. I've been part of the nominating committee. I've been part of the interview committee. And I can really say nobody said you've got to vote for this person. They'll tell you why you should vote, but they're not going to pressure you to vote. But you got to show up. A lot of times people don't want to show up, and the ward leaders do get to make the decisions because they hold the proxies within the party. The Democratic Party, I think, does it a little fair where you can only hold 3 proxies, so you can't divide that up, that control between 12 people. So It is a better charter. I don't think. Here's a question: when are these elections held? Do you want to take that one, Christine? I guess they're the reorg. The elections are held during the regular election cycle.
Right. So the district leader elections, if there's primaries, would be held when there's primaries, and if there's no primaries, then there isn't an election. The reorganization is whenever it's sort of held by the party. So the party leadership, because there's an executive committee, sets the date, and then we do it then.
So this is not a question. This is an endorsement. Hector Santiago, Christine played a huge part in helping me organize my campaign early on. Wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her initial structure. Appreciate her comments on educating our community and civic engagement. And I think that's great. That's why we all, I'm sorry, he said, and commitment. That's why and again, that's what I'm trying to do with this show. And I thank you for, that you've come on here for this. It really is. It is important that we all feel there's a structure out there that you have no choice in, and that's not true. Only 14% of the people in Yonkers are going out and voting. If we raise that, if there was another 8% on top of that 14 that went out and voted for whom they wanted, elections would be very different. Christine, do you want to? We're going to close this out with a wonderful video that Christine had made. But before we do that, I open the floor to Christine to give her the closing comments.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me here. I probably should have opened with that, but thank you for having me here and for allowing me the opportunity to sort of share what I know. I am more than happy to continue to help people if anybody wants to run for district leader. But I want to also say, there's other positions to run for, right? Like you can run for city council, there's city council president, there's mayor, there's county legislator, there's assembly, senate, and it just goes on from there. So I don't want people to just think that they have to be limited to, just the district leader position, which is the county committee person. They can also run for other positions. So that's number one. And number two, I really want to drive home the point that there's so many different ways that we can get involved in the community, right? Like, so I also put together these various sort of like community education panel discussions where I already did two. One was on, housing and sort of like our housing crisis and affordable housing. And another one was on mental health events and mental health awareness because I'm an LCSW. And so I think there's also other avenues and other ways that people can partner together so that they can bring awareness and volunteer and work together to make Yonkers a better place.
Okay, I'm going to play the video. There are a few other questions, and you're welcome to stay on and take them with me. You can see them, or Freddie's been very vocal, and Freddie's been good to me and allowing me to be on the show. So I want to make sure that I do put his questions up. Freddie and I agree on some things; we don't agree on others. So but I do want to make sure that I give him the opportunity to share this. Our ward leaders, district leaders, all supposed to get the word out to the community on matters such as. Yes, that's true. I agree with that. It is important for ward leaders to communicate to their district leaders. And look, I retell this story almost every week when I was told to go to City Hall and talk about extending term limits 4 years ago. And those kind of requests, they do come from ward leaders, usually from the chair. The chair communicates to the ward leader. By the way, just to add here, the chairman of the party does not have a vote in the candidates, at least on the Republican side. The chair is a non-voting official. It's the ward leaders who are elected. So district leaders are elected. They elect their ward leader, and then the ward leaders, along with the district leaders, have the vote for candidates. Let's see. Are also award leaders, district leaders not? Yes, they are responsible for making calls and getting out and getting people to vote. If you got good ward leaders and good district leaders, look, if you're the party nominated candidate, it's the ward leader and the district leaders that will act as your volunteers. And Christine, you volunteered for a number of campaigns.
I've volunteered. I've been paid for. I've worked on. I'm somebody who got involved very early on. I was about 22 or 23 years old when I got involved in Yonkers politics, specifically on the Democratic side, right? Because that's the party that I chose, and I've been involved in a lot of different campaigns. So I always found it to be a rewarding, fun experience. I will have to say that my campaign was probably the most fun, but I found all of them to be great. And I've always chosen candidates that I believed in, where our ideals matched, and I really felt like if this person was in office, I would continue to support them. And so I've given money, I've knocked on doors, I've made phone calls. My daughter has made videos, and endorsed them. So I've done a lot of different things actually for
I want to see your daughter run for office.
in 10
But
years.
on that note, Freddie Vasquez says Christine should run from city council. Are there any plans in your future? Don't want to put you on the spot.
And see, right? Depending on what comes up and what's right in my life at the time, we'll wait and see.
Okay, well, we're going to close out this with a quick video that Christine has put together. And I think it's great. And it really just sums up what we said in 26 minutes in probably 3 minutes. So I'm going to put it up here.
Do you want to change the world? Start with Yonkers. Do you care about sustainable environment, job security, property values, food insecurity and availability? We'll start with politics. Why do we have such bad choices? Most people think politics is rigged. It is. Tired of the same politicians? You can help pick better ones. How do you pick the candidates? You run for a volunteer party position called district leader or county committee person. You win. You pick the best candidate to represent your party. What do I need to run for district leader, you ask? Do I need a lot of money? No. Is it a lot of work? Yes and no. Do I need a lot of passion? Yes, absolutely. Are you ready? Here we go. Register in a party that matches what you believe. The major political parties in New York have district leaders who pick the candidates at a convention. Yonkers has more registered Democrats than Republicans, so Democrats who run are more likely to win. How do you run for district leader? Register vote in a political party. Find out what district you live in. Find out how many signatures you need to run for district leader. The number of signatures you need to get on the ballot is 5% of the number of people who are registered on your party line in your district. Get on the ballot. Call people and tell them to vote for you or knock on their doors. Get more votes than anyone else and you win. You can reach out to your party leadership and ask them for help, but you do not have to. If party leadership does not get back to you, you can run for county committee person or district leader anyway. Here's a sample. It may be a little small, but you can go to the local Westchester County Board of Elections and you can get a sample ballot from there. There are multiple districts within a city. Run where you know the most people, but make sure your New York State Assembly person also represents that district. You can go to this website to find all the dates you need to run for district leader. Go to this website to get all the paperwork you need to run for district leader. You can call the Board of Elections if you have any questions at 914-995-5700, and they can answer questions, and they will also give you a list of all the registered party members who you can get signatures from. Thank you, and good luck. Hope your voice and ideas are heard. Do you want to?
There we go. Well, that was great. Thank you, Christine, and thank you for being a guest. I'm not as fancy as some other guys. I don't have music to take me out yet. We're still working on the technical aspects of this show, but I hope you enjoyed it. And next week, I'm going to have Tim Hodges on. We're going to talk about volunteer opportunities within Yonkers, namely the Rotary. So we're going to be, next week is no politics week. Next week will be volunteering in Yonkers, which is another way of civic engagement. So thank you very much. Good night, everybody.